Well, I threatened to do it, so here it is, my soldering station. The heart of this is the TS100. It is by far the best soldering iron I've ever used, and I've used more than two. One of the best features is it heats up in about 15 seconds. One of the other awesome features is it can be powered by batteries, which is a game changer. This has made it much easier to fix things in the car or at a friend's house. Well, now I'll take the top off and show you what's under the hood. I was inspired to build this after watching one of Adam Savage's one-day builds where he made a grab-and-go collection of all his soldering gear, so I built my own. It's made out of 3/4 inch plywood and painted black because I'm fancy that way.
Let's take the top piece off, set that aside, and I'll show you how it works. What makes this whole thing work is this DC-DC step-down module. It takes 4.5 to 28 volts in and will output 1 to 20 volts at a maximum of 3 amps, which should be more than enough for the light and the fan. The output voltage is adjusted with this little trim pot. It can be adjusted up or down. I have about 20 volts coming in from either the AC adapter or the battery. The fan and the light will run at 12 volts, but seem to work better at 9 volts. The fan was very loud, and the light ran very hot. At 9 volts, the fan is almost quiet, and the light runs a lot cooler.
I made a little heatsink to keep it cool and also to mount it since that board has no provision for mounting.
The soldering iron is connected to the middle or the common on this double pull, double throw switch. The AC power is connected to the left and the battery to the right, so that no matter which way the switch is thrown, it is connected to either AC or battery, but not both at the same time.
This is my preferred way to manage cables. It is simply a piece of ABS pipe, and then you can bundle up the wire and shove it in there, and then it's easily deployable. It has a built-in light and fan, and it can run off either batteries, which it is now, or AC power. I have mounted some cross-lock tweezers to the end of this lock line for work holding. I've also modified a binder clip to hold RC battery connectors. Inside the lock line, I have some Teflon tube that routes the solder from the spool, which is located behind here, through the lock line, and then I can position it wherever I like. The spool is back here, and it keeps it handy, but still out of the way. I have some flush cutters mounted in a holster on the side here. Next to the soldering iron is this tool, which is called a solder sucker. It's useful for replacing parts on a circuit board. It has a little plunger that would clear out the cooled solder inside the tip there so it doesn't get clogged. On top, I have another set of cross-lock tweezers and then a little dental pick for manipulating little parts. And then a couple neodymium magnets so they stay in place but are easily accessible. These are my automatic wire strippers. I've tried a couple different brands of these, and the vice grip ones I just love. They seem to work quite good. There is a pressure adjustment fine-tuning knob here, so if it's not grabbing, you can just fiddle with that. And there you go. Probably the most awkward part about these, though, is the wire cutter. It's there, but it's a little bit awkward to use. On the front, I have a halo LED light and a computer fan to act as an exhaust for the smoke. And then I have a recycled circuit board as a backer. The light is left over from another mod that I did. I made a little light ring on my drill press so I can see what I'm doing. And the fan just happened to fit, so I figured I'd cram those two together. I've got the tip cleaner here, and then this is just a little garbage bin, and it just magnets right there. In these drawers, I have miscellaneous items. I have a spare dental pick. I've got some solder wick This stuff is used much like the solder sucker in pulling off components. If you heat up the solder with the soldering iron and then apply the wick to it, the solder flows into the fibers of the solder wick, and then you can take off whatever components is on the other side. I call these things snappers. They're quite handy for joining two wires either temporarily or permanently. They're a little bit expensive, so I try to use them in the temporary manner. I call them snappers because if you get your finger in the wrong place, it snaps down aggressively. But they're super handy. I quite like them.
Moving up, we have heat shrink. As the name implies, you apply heat and it shrinks. That's what it does. It is electrically insulative, so if you join two pieces of wire, slide some over, and then heat it up, it'll shrink around it and keep you from getting zapped. On the next drawer, I have a couple heat guns or lighters. Lighters are nice and portable, so fits this build pretty well. On the top drawer, I have 3 different tips. The TS100 makes it very easy to change out tips depending on what kind of work you're doing or if a tip burns out. The left-hand tip is my favorite. It's small but not too small. The middle is quite pointy, good for precision work, and the right-hand one is a chisel tip. So at least I have options.
The drawers I designed and then 3D printed, I wanted full extension drawers, and I accomplished that by using antennas, those telescopic antennas that we used to have on top of TVs. I cut them down to the right length, and then I used these brass thread inserts for plastic. I ground them down so that they would fit inside, and then I soldered them in place. The cage I bent was quite tricky. There's inside bends, outside bends. So what I did is I took some cardboard and I laid out my measurements and I figured out which bends need to go where, because with something like this, certain bends can only be done before other bends, so your order of operations is quite important.
I almost forgot to show off the battery adapter. This is a fantastic print. The original is by JTA, and it's a DeWalt battery adapter off Thingiverse. I remixed it and added a few more screw holes.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.